Bali tourism stakeholders welcome tourism task force, and Bules behaving badly times infinity. Stay tuned for details. Welcome to the latest news from Bali and Indonesia. This is May 27th, 2023, and my name is Bruce. Selamat siang. And what is the weather like today? Well, weather is hot and sunny. It is 29.9 degrees Celsius with humidity of 68% and wind speed of 6.7 kilometers per hour. It is a beautiful day, but hot if you're walking out in the sun. And I hope the weather is beautiful wherever you are. Well, a lot of Bule behaving badly today. There is just so much stuff. It's just depressing. Maybe there's reason to think that things are looking up. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get started with this. Formation of Tourism Task Force, welcome positively. So the stakeholders in Bali tourism industry have been welcoming the Tourism Task Force, which is called the Task Force for the Acceleration of Bali Tourism Governance. The main point of this article is that all the major stakeholders in Bali tourism have been welcoming the formation of this task force because they said it has needed to be done, and they hope that it is going to help control the situation with some of the Bules behaving badly. Will it? I don't know. We'll have to see. What do some of these stakeholders say? According to the chairman of the Asita Bali DPD, Putu Winastra, he said, "This is what's expected. The task force is very good, and he hopes that law enforcement process will be faster because then it can be handled directly by the task force rather than going through a number of different agencies, that there'll be one place that is responsible for all of this." He said that he had no problem with the consequences of enforcing the rules carried out by the task force. He said there's two sides to this, not just the tourist side, but the industry side as well, meaning, well, you need to control some of the bad behavior. You can't just think about, well, are the tourists going to be put off by this? But how about the people that are working in the industry? How about taking care of them and making sure that their jobs and their responsibilities are easier? The head of the Badung PHRI, Igusti Nurarai Surawijaya, said that the PHRI fully supports the task force. He said it's important in the framework of implementing and actualizing enforcement of regulations together with relevant stakeholders. He said that if law enforcement is not carried out, it is going to have a negative impact on tourist attraction. TTW, according to Indonesian acronym, and Bali's tourism image around the world. He said the existence of the task force is not going to be counterproductive in bringing as many tourists as possible to Bali. Do we really want as many tourists as possible? What happened to quality tourism, right? Sometimes it just goes out. He said if things are left unchecked, not disciplined, it will have a negative effect on tourists who really want to travel or take a vacation and enjoy Bali. He said the people that don't like the formation of the Tourist Task Force are those who intend or want to act badly in Bali. The Bali Tourism Village Communication Forum also supported the formation of the task force and said this is the right step. It gives a deterrent effect. The chairperson said, especially now Bali tourism is recovering, don't let unscrupulous tourists act arbitrarily, which could damage the image of Bali as a world tourist destination. He hopes that the task force will not only act when something happens, but will be proactive in terms of socializing the new rules and regulations to the tourists when they come in here. He said proper socialization needs to be done so that there's no misunderstandings with tourists about what they can and can't do when they're in Bali. For example, he said, tourists who come to certain destinations should not feel offended or disturbed because of inappropriate socialization communication patterns. He said, explain the boundaries of sanctity in a place so that people can't just enter it. Talking about temples, for example. And we're going to get to that one in a minute. Next segment, Governor Koster ensures firm action. And I'm going to collapse a couple of stories in here to make this thing shorter. So the governor was reacting to the incident with the foreign woman who walked through a performance of Balinese dance in Ubud naked, completely naked, and the video was everywhere. In some news sources, they had 5 or 6 different angles that they were looking at this story from, and so there was a lot written about this. The governor said he understands that the woman has mental health problems. She's currently in Bali, well, as late as this morning, the last article that I read, and she's being taken care of there. They've contacted the German embassy, and the German embassy contacted her family, and apparently her family is coming to get her. The governor said that in cases like this, deportation is going to happen immediately, but in her case, because she has mental health problems, the deportation process is going to be delayed until she's in better mental condition. Regarding the handling of the foreigner who was behaving badly, the governor stated that the task force had immediately worked and met the person concerned. He said, "We must be firm in responding immediate deportation." Of course, not immediate. In her case, as soon as she gets better. But he said the task force, which I just talked about in the previous segment, is on the ball here. He said they've started getting into this right away. So immigration has temporarily suspended the deportation process until this young lady is feeling better and the family is here to take care of her and accompany her back to Germany in order to anticipate and prevent the occurrence of violations by foreign tourists in Bali. The do's and don'ts is going to be distributed. I've talked about them many times, and we'll get to that in just a minute. According to the head of the Bali Tourism Office, Jakarta Bagus Pemayun, talked about many times, he said that the guidelines are going to be socialized by spreading them to all embassies, Indonesian embassies, and furthermore, they will be conveyed to travel agents and airlines. He said, why the Indonesian embassies? Because people apply for visas through Indonesian embassies. Not everybody does. With visa on arrival, you don't need to do that. And you can get B211 from online as well and come in, and so you bypass that. So what happens if you bypass that? Well, this is going to be handed out at the airport when you go through immigration. And apparently, according to this article, the do's and don'ts have finally been completed. Unbelievable. And it's been reported to the leadership, to the governor of Bali. He's signed it. Socialization is going to be carried out immediately. So what about this young lady that has caused such a stir on social media? Well, she's a foreigner from Germany. She came here on a VOA and apparently suffering from depression of some sort because, according to all the articles I read, she was been taking medication. So she was staying at a hotel in Ubud, and she was not behaving correctly there, apparently walking around naked through the place and disturbing foreigners. I don't know why she wasn't reported by the people at the hotel. None of the articles I've read have mentioned that. But she decided to check out, and she went to the airport. She came back to the hotel, and she said she was waiting for a friend. They didn't want her to stay there. She said she was waiting for a friend. Then she left her bags, and she went over to the Cafe Lotus and to the Puri where the dance performance was being held. And when she got to where the ticket guy was collecting tickets, he said, "You don't have a ticket? Sorry, you can't go in." She was wearing a negligee, brown negligee, according to all the stories I've read. And she pushed her way past him anyway, proceeded to disrobe completely, walked through the middle of the tourists, seated on two sides with a little aisle in between. And if you've seen the video, the music continued, the dancers continued. She walked right past them, walked up to the door of the Puri and pushed it open. It sounded like she broke it, actually. At which point, a guy came and kind of told her, hey, you cannot go in there. She turned around, she did a kind of a little dance move. She walked down, then got down into a squatting position where she looked like she was praying, She was still naked, then turned around, she was going to go back up again, and at that point they decided to do something about her because the videos that I've seen all end right there. So there's some questions about security, and the government has issued a warning to the people holding this that you need to get your security into place. This is not a good situation. If you're letting a woman who's, well, naked wander through and walk right through a bunch of tourists without stopping her, what is happening to security? And people in charge of this said, look, this has been going on for decades. We've been having these dances. We've never had anything like this happening. And yes, our security is lax in this case, and this is time for us to do some reflection on how we can make things better. Let's hope so. Because if I was a quality tourist, as one of the commenters said the other day, I would be, well, I'd think twice about going somewhere if you're going to have naked people wandering through, because who knows who else could be wandering through, somebody with a knife or whatever. And so security needs to be beefed up in these things, because we do have people with mental issues these days kind of wandering around. It seems like we get more and more of them. So the young lady was taken by authorities and taken to Bali Hospital, the mental institution in Bali, and she is being treated there. And as I said earlier, as far as I know, she's still there undergoing treatment, and her family is going to be coming here to get her, and then she will be deported and blacklisted, I'm assuming. And the deputy governor, well, as usual, said, it's not just Bali, it's happening all over the world. He said there's countries that are at war, there's depressed economies. Bali is extraordinarily attractive compared to other countries. Everything is cheap. People are friendly, so they come to Bali. Not only those who are fine, but those who are stressed come here as well. And so there are going to have to be purification ceremonies taken at the temple, because this woman defiled the temple by entering into doors that nobody else is allowed to unless you're carrying out sacred ceremonies here. And even the dancers, according to commenters, observers here, said even the dancers use doors on the sides. They don't come through the center door. According to the chairman of the Bali Tourism Board, Partha Adnyana, I've mentioned many times, he said, tourists who come to Bali too easily are one of the factors in incidents like this. He said if the price of coming to Bali is increased, maybe that will weed out some of the people. No, he said it's not going to stop things like this, but it may filter out the cheap tourist. Okay, we're talking about the cheap tourist again. And so all of these things are happening, but nobody is really sure exactly how they're going to put an end to this. The do's and don'ts, well, it's finished, right? It's going to come out. I don't know how it's going to actually be disseminated. I don't know if anybody's going to read it. Will it make any difference? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Partha said these things, foreigners making trouble, this has only happened after the pandemic. He said before the pandemic, we never had any of these problems. He said now we have. He said we've got to have more clarity, a clear way of how we're going to handle things here. He said people go up to the temple and so on. They get naked. They get into fights with priests. This is something I've never seen in my history, and I've been involved in tourism my whole life. He said this stuff can happen anywhere in the world, so let's not just trash Bali because of it. He said, I don't think it's possible for tourists to have a mental health certificate to come to Bali, because that's a bit excessive. Okay, I like that one. That is one of my favorite suggestions. Let's everybody have a mental health certificate if you want to come to Bali. And what about those of us that are already here? Maybe we should have them as well. He said a filtering of foreigners is carried out through the VOA restrictions. Well, he said you can't do that because it has to be reciprocal. Internationally, this will not be a good thing. And in international relations, Indonesia might be considered racist, and this will become a new problem later internationally. And so nobody has figured out a way to stop these incidents that are going on. And at this point, I'll just throw in a few besides the next two that I'm going to talk about. But there was a French guy who was sentenced to 1.5 years in jail just the other day. He was arrested in January because he had robbed a mini market. And there was a tourist who ran through the window of a shop, and well, she paid her way out of that. And there were panhandling tourists on the beach the other day down in Kuta, and it just goes on and on and on. There are so many reports now, and as I've said before, with the phones, the smartphones and social media, anything that foreigners do here is liable to be put on camera, and so yeah, that's going to show up and you could be in trouble. And by the way, it's not just foreigners, because I watched a couple of videos the other day of some Indonesians taken of some Indonesians behaving inappropriately. One, a case of road rage where one Indonesian guy ran into another Indonesian guy on a motorbike. They got off to discuss it, and it ended up in a fist fight, and other people came in and they got involved in it, and fists were flying left and right. This is something that I have never seen in the past, and I've been here for 33 years. This is just, I don't know if it's the water, it's the sun, what's going on, but the whole island seems like it has gone crazy. And then another one that I saw just yesterday, which was pretty bizarre, a guy is driving around, a Balinese guy dressed in ceremonial clothes, and he's looking at a smartphone, driving one-handed, and he runs right into a bunch of motorcycles coming into the road from a side road. And just like that. And so weird stuff is happening all over the island. Let's take a look at this one. Drunk to furious in Ubud, Russian foreign man arrested. So a Russian man was arrested because he was drunk and sleeping on the street in Jalan Raya Pliatan in Ubud. And this is based on information from residents. And so this guy was sleeping on the street. People tried to wake him up, couldn't wake him up. Locals got disturbed by it. They contacted the police. Police showed up. They were not able to get him up either. And they weren't able to get any responses from him when they finally did rouse him. And so in order to prevent unwanted things from happening, he was immediately secured by the Ubud police. So they took him to jail. Once they got him to the Ubud police station, it turned out that he's been in trouble before. According to a police spokesman, he's been involved in at least 2 incidents. He went berserk one time when he was drunk at a mini market, and the police caught him and took him to the Ubud station then, and then there was another incident. So at this point, they've decided to give him to immigration and let them deal with him. And well, you know what's going to happen there. He's going to be on his way back to the USSR. Oh, not to the USSR, back to Russia. Okay, and another disturbing incident. Foreigners and Indonesians got into fisticuffs in a McD. Viral McD visitors fight against Caucasians. So this has been all over the internet too. And so what happened here? This was in Jimbaran, and so at a McDonald's, there were apparently a couple there, hate to say it, but Russians, and they were sitting vaping, apparently, and a group of domestic tourists from Jakarta, according to 2 of the stories that I read, and they came in with the family, and from the ages, sound like, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, they had a baby with them. They objected to the Russians vaping, and they asked management to tell them they weren't, and there were apparently signs, according to the response from McDonald's. They said there were signs there saying no smoking, not in text. They said picture, cigarette. Okay, they're vaping. So I don't know. I'm not a vapor. I am a cigarette smoker, as all my friends know that meet me. I smoke a lot. So I don't know. Maybe the Russians decided, hey, this is not a cigarette, what we got here. And so they were vaping. But McDonald's people came and told them you can't do that. They put their vaping stuff away. But this is interesting, and I've read a number of different stories, and this one sounds the most likely to have happened because I haven't seen an official word yet from the police on this. But the Russians took out their phone and started videoing the Indonesians who had reported them. They were not happy. And the Indonesians saw that and they took out their phones. It's the battle of the cell phones. And so taking this, and then they got into a shouting match with each other, according to an employee there, shouting in Russian, shouting in Indonesian, probably not understanding each other, although, according to one article, the facial expressions said it all. And at that point, the Russians approached the table and then a fight started. women on women, men on men, injuries on both sides. Who started it? Not clear. Two of the articles that I read made it seem like the Russians started it, but according to the little statement from the police, they said they are investigating. They have to look at the CCTV footage and see what happened because they are not sure. The Russians have filed a report against the Indonesians. The Indonesians have filed a report against the Russians. And so, wow, this is just crazy. It's just crazy. A video of this was sent to Nilu Jelantic, who you most likely know about if you've listened to any of my videos before or if you follow social media. And she has this and she has other videos of the most recent egregious attacks or behavior by foreigners here in Bali. And, well, there's another one that I have not talked about, and I'm not going to put it here because I haven't seen any news sources. I only saw a short little thing on coconuts, and, well, I'm not taking that as local media, so I'm not going to go through that. But in this case, I saw a very short little video. There was a foreign man and a woman on a motorbike. The man who was driving the motorbike was talking to somebody off camera. The woman was sitting in the back. She spreads her legs for the camera, and, well, it's blurred out, so I don't know if she had underwear on or not. And the man turns around, sees her, he immediately shuts her legs. This has gone viral, and Nilu Jelantic sent a thing to, of course, immigration and said, we've got to get rid of these trashy tourists. So as I said months and months ago when this whole thing just started and the snowball effect is going on and on and on, that there is not going to be an end to this. This is going to get worse and worse and worse, and it seems like it. We're getting more and more tourists in. We're getting people coming in here. There was another incident as well I didn't go into of a guy selling stuff, hats and shirts and trinkets and things, and said he was broke and he needed the money. Well, okay, that's illegal. So all is not fine in paradise. Okay, that's it for today. It is a Saturday, a beautiful day, and I want to spend some time with my granddaughter. I hope wherever you are, if you're on the island, I hope you're having a good time and not running into craziness. And if you're not on the island and you are planning on coming here, I hope you have a good time, safe flight. And that is it. Thanks for viewing. Be kind to someone today. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.